systematic disclosure has been unfolding. The researcher Jeremy Corbyn has been revealing a pattern that draws attention. Classified documents about unidentified anomalous phenomena, or WAFs, through what they call inheritance from former officials or scientists. Deceased individuals who have been sending, they left documents to their relatives, children, for example. Now they are being revealed from a group of 11 American scientists who have disappeared, which now is about 14, but anyway, of the 11 scientists that are known, they have disappeared or lost their lives in a strange way. At least there are two cases that had direct ties to the Los Alamos National Laboratory, the birthplace of the Manhattan Project. The most recent information comes directly, for example, from one of the sons of the head of government cybersecurity who decided to hand over his father's private file after his passing. We may be looking at what they call a new form of whistleblowing or leaks, but it's not just about active employees or testimonies outside of the cases, but about people who were actually inside the project. These mechanisms suggest that security is or was so strict that any leak could even cost you your life. But that information was left to family members who have simply now decided to reveal it. By connecting the deaths of scientists linked to Los Alamos with the delivery of cybersecurity files, what emerges is what they call, at the very least, a disturbing narrative. The digital infrastructure that is protecting the FOIA, which is this disclosure of secret documents, we'll talk about this in a moment, and about Black Bolt and some of the cases that have been coming to light. This phenomenon goes beyond it's not just about, they're UFOs. No, they're unidentified flying objects. It goes way beyond that. It transcends that topic. It goes further because there are cases that show just how strange reality can be sometimes. High-level documents are reaching journalists through family members and even through members of the United States Congress. The average citizen now has to consider the idea that this is no longer just a narrative about mysteries. From some journalists who decide to talk about strange things, it's not just that. This goes further, and now we're talking about official documents. So the question may be uncomfortable for many is, are we talking about the acceptance of a phenomenon that has been studied for decades? And also how dangerous it is for some people to make these disclosures. We are facing what they now call, once and for all, to make it clear, a global paradigm shift. The real anomaly, so to speak, is no longer in the recovered documents, but in the number of people who have died who apparently tried to reveal information. Is that what's happening? Are those who want to disclose information disappearing? Especially people who are connected to laboratories, connected to, experimentation with, let's say, very innovative materials, to put it one way. What is happening at the moment when two major groups are clashing within the United States government, for example? One group wants the information to be disclosed as it is, and another wants to hide this once and for all. There will be a documentary coming out soon, by the way, which we should pay attention to, because in that documentary, which will premiere on May 17, they are going to reveal some of these documents. But we have to remember that Black Bolt is also there for everyone to access. Anyone can go to the Black Bolt website. There are documents there from the 50s. There's a main archive, just that archive from 1952 to 1969. There are 12,000 documents and reports. Among those 12,000, there are hundreds of cases that never had an explanation. Pilots, radars, military testimonies of all kinds of situations that simply couldn't be explained at the time or even now. The 1947 Roswell Army Airfield incident. Here are the complete documents. The first document is about a metallic flying disc. The second document is about a balloon. Third document, it says there is a mannequin. The information keeps changing, and there are documents showing how the versions changed. Regarding the information about the Roble case, it's not that the media made a mistake. It's not a mistake. No. The documents kept changing, and everything that was published is there. which at the time was obviously a secret. The Phoenix case, for example, 1997, a gigantic triangular formation, an extended duration in which hundreds of people, including military personnel, were able to see documents that are available on Blackball and that you yourselves can access. The Wrensham Forest incident, or what United States Air Force personnel also call the British Roswell incident. They saw very strange objects and lights, a triangular formation, and other things as well. By the way, there was documented radiation measurement in those cases. Yes. And which was also archived, right? But Blacks is also already public. Files from the National Security Agency about strange signals. Documents that, by the way, some of them are partially censored. There are things that to this day, despite this law, no. By the way, for those who are interested, the law is called FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, where things from the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the Pentagon, and many other agencies are declassified. More secret. They've been there. Well, thanks to that law, things that are not related to current national security have to be revealed. Another thing, and it's striking that even despite the law, there are things in documents that are half or more redacted, with a big black mark totally blocked out. There's the FBI memorandum about the discs and their occupants. Circular objects, strange bodies described, well, there are the documents. The case from 1952 about the incident in Washington, D.C., by the way, with the radar detections and everything, all the documents. The USS Nimitz incident, 2004, by the way. Objects under the sea coming in and out like it's nothing at extraordinary speeds. But that's from many decades ago. They revealed in this latest data that any country, if a country, because that's the theory, it's not that just one country has it, any country could have it. If they had that, they would have already controlled the world without any problem. Because of the technological characteristics of this type of objects. There's the ATIP project, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, where the Pentagon has studied unidentified flying objects. Officially. But not publicly, right? So if it's being investigated, if there's so much documentation, if there's so much information, why? Why do they keep isolating this information, these facts? In the case of Burke, it's an incident for me. And that's how we'll go. The case of Iran in 1976, one of the most documented ones, by the way, the one that could be revealed as such. In a very large area, at the same time, while the objects appeared, there was a complete electronic failure. The case of the Belgian wave. Black triangles started appearing on all radars according to the pilots, a very strong case. The files on the nuclear bases are, by the way, another series of very serious, very interesting incidents, and the Navy files are there too. They were also released under FOIA, among others, just as an example. If you go with the Nimitz, the Iran case, Tehran, the capital, the Washington 1852 case, the Ruiz case, which is in England, and the nuclear bases case, with those 5 cases you have enough. Keep in mind that we have lived through some pretty bizarre and strange situations that go beyond little lights in the sky and flashes, which can be interesting in some contexts, but these cases are extremely well documented. Well, these are things that not only should be studied, but we should also start looking for more explanations, and above all, start revealing more recent information. This documentary, like others, will be trying hard to bring out and expose those kinds of things, but also to expose. I insist that there are still risks for people who are deeply involved in these cases, and it seems like either they disappear or someone makes them disappear. Well, there are more things, there are other important matters to discuss about what's happening in the world, so let's move on to the next reports. Let's go to other interesting topics. There's a lot being reported. This is another one of the images we saw a little while ago during the broadcast. Over there with Jerez, we saw this topic. There wasn't much information yet about what's happening in that region of the world, but now there are a few more details. According to the reports, this would be a unit of agents, people from Algeria, people from Al Qaeda, who have taken control of a city, a town, a small town of about 40,000 inhabitants. Right now, about 10 kilometers from Mopti, near an area called Gao and Timbuktu, between Segu and the capital Bamako, that's where they would be operating. These groups surrounded the city on hundreds of motorcycles, and they were heavily armed, some even with bazookas. They would have been arriving in the area, causing blackouts, cutting off communications, and trying to control the area. It's an area that was previously a military base of the G5 Sahel Joint Force, and now this Al Qaeda group is trying to take control of this part of the world. Well, that's also happening in the world. Let's move on to the next image of what's happening on the planet. Check out the next one. Can you see it over there? I don't think you can. Right there it is. This is a joint offensive by Al Qaeda, or rather, and the Tuareg nationalist FLA, according to reports. This is happening in Mali as well. Well, it's part of what's going on. You can hear gunshots, a bit of chaos in the area. Obviously, well, it's something that draws attention. Another thing, the images that also stand out today is this image. We can show it over there. That's an image that has been circulating of the Chinese forces. Well, they upload images on the official channels where the Chinese Navy is carrying out exercises near Luzon Island in the Philippines, already with weapons, with live ammunition. They're no longer just exhibition exercises, but exercises with drones, with missiles being fired in that area. They call them drills, but with live fire coordinating in air, land, and sea. They call them rapid maneuvers, according to the Minister of Defense or the Ministry of Defense of China. It's an issue, I insist, that's getting hotter and hotter in that area. Another image that stands out is this one. It's an image with a story behind it. This robot was moving around in an area over there in Ukraine. It's one of those robots that carry ammunition to the front lines, right? And suddenly, this lady, look, there she is, an older woman, was walking so far out there that you wonder, where is she going? Well, it turns out the lady was very close to a frontline area and had to flee because her house was destroyed. And the Ukrainian forces spot her, one using a drone and another using a little robot, right? So they see her and they send her a message through the robot. First, they spot her from the air and then send her a message on land using a small robot with a sign that says, "Grandma, get on." It says grandma, right? Well, in Ukrainian, grandma, get on, right? And so the lady says, well, yes, obviously, just imagine her with two canes walking alone in the rain, cold, and so on. Well, the lady reads the message and indeed she gets in, right? The Ukrainians were watching all of that from there. The person operating it can also speak to her through a microphone, and there's also a written message. So the person tells the lady, get in, ma'am. And so, well, the lady was already taken out from the front through this. Well, this is kind of like a robot or a drone, like a little tank, so to speak, that carries supplies and also transports the wounded, that kind of thing. Well, the whole operation to get the lady out and save her took 4 hours. It's a really serious issue, and I insist, how many times have we told stories like this, right? It's not the first time and it won't be the last. I mean, come on, stories like this are going to become more and more common. There she goes, the lady. Just look at that. When she arrived, they helped her out. What a journey, right? Just imagine the combination of generations, the life of this lady. Well, you know, just think about how much she must have experienced living in that region, in that area. And now she's literally being saved by a drone, which is a really interesting thing, honestly, in these times. But let's move on to other matters. The Tehran regime has sent a message to the United States. This time, the regime claims it will opt for a complete blockade in Hormuz. If no agreement is reached, the Tehran regime threatens to respond if the United States maintains the blockade and claims that the war will continue. If the strait is not open, they are, well, honestly desperate. Because in the end, well, it's one thing for you to close the strait to others, but for you to still be able to export oil to what's happening now, which is this blockade. Now it's fair for everyone because the United States blocks it from here and Iran blocks it from this side. But besides that, they sanctioned the Chinese company that used to buy oil from the Iranians, so now it's under sanction. If they buy oil from the Iranians, they're going to face sanctions and all that. Well, obviously, when that happens, what China does is stop buying it or look for other alternatives, another place to buy from. He says we are ready and determined as we monitor enemy actions and movements. The commander assures this, and by the way, basically all the important statements come from the Iranian military commanders, and now Abbas Sargachi has taken a sort of secondary role. Iranian politicians, well, they have a voice, but they don't have a vote. I mean, basically, they just follow the orders of the generals who are basically controlling Iran. It's also reported, and this is something that draws a lot of attention because there was an attack with explosives against the radar. On this occasion, an armed group disabled the Santana radar, which monitors air traffic over the Colombian Pacific, in what the Civil Aviation Authority described as a terrorist attack against essential civil infrastructure. I repeat, this happened in Colombia. By the way, a terrorist attack is also reported on the Pan American Highway in Colombia. At least 7 people lost their lives and 17 were injured in an attack where an explosive destroyed a section of the highway. Just imagine the madness. Well, this happened over there in Colombia. By the way, a big greeting to the community that watched us over there. It would be great to hear your opinion, right? Another matter that's also important because after all, these are NATO countries and this time the challenges are once again directed toward this part of the world. Let's see if this is about Romania. According to reports, there's an alert in Romania because there was an incident involving a drone or some drones that allegedly hit this area in Romania. Supposedly they were drone debris. The point is that 500 people had to evacuate their homes after that. But not just debris. Drone debris damaged a building and utility poles in an incident that NATO and the European Union are viewing as a direct threat to collective stability. Romania had, in a way, been lucky not to have attacks or, let's say, not to receive drones of that magnitude. I want to remind you that there had been some debris along the border with Ukraine, yes, in this area. But this time the attack goes a bit deeper, or let's say, the mistake, so to speak, and this obviously causes concern. NATO, no, but it's this constant. A reminder that the war can spread a little further at any moment. It's also quite frightening. Also, take a look at what's happening internally in Iran. At this moment, the Iranian regime claims it has detained 239 opposition members accused of collaborating with the enemy, according to them. And in response to this situation, it's also worth remembering that today there was a person, someone they considered a traitor. According to this, they claim that they have, well, eliminated, not executed. Basically, this isn't something from this regime, which is quite authoritarian. It doesn't make sense. On the other hand, that's it already. This morning we were talking during the first broadcast we did about the conflicts taking place between Israel and Lebanon. Well, he didn't have it. Julia came out publicly to give the order to attack Hezbollah with force. This was because of the rocket launches toward Israel. That too, well, it draws attention. Today it's part, let's say, of a conflict that not only doesn't stop but is also a conflict that's evolving. It's likely to spread to other areas, right? The Gulf countries have already stated that if this continues, they will have to get involved in the conflict. It's a topic that hasn't been discussed much, but yes, at least some countries are already considering that possibility. They are analyzing the likelihood that the Gulf countries will sooner or later enter the conflict. This would obviously be the case. Well, it would basically be a different story because it would mean the extension of a conflict to another level. Let's move on to other important matters as well. Notice that there is already more information about what is happening in Mali, besides the images we saw a moment ago, images that are chaotic. Let's listen. Bueno, esto es parte, digamos, de lo que se está observando en estos momentos allá en Mali, pero ya hay un poquito más de detalles de lo que está sucediendo. Vamos primero al mapa donde se encuentra, evidentemente, pues Mali. Bueno, aquí estamos hablando de la parte norte de África, ¿no? Y bueno, pues Mali desde hace tiempo ya está a punto de caer, digamos, hacia las manos de grupos terroristas, básicamente. Hombres armados habrían atacado varios puntos en la capital de Mali y otras ciudades el día de hoy, en un asalto coordinado y según lo que reportan residentes y autoridades. Grupos terroristas armados no identificados habrían atacado ciertos lugares y cuarteles a la misma hora. Aseguran que son de Al Qaeda, pero bueno, pues evidentemente ahí hay un intento de expansión de estos grupos. Según lo que dice los periodistas en la zona, básicamente los corresponsales de guerra, han estado escuchando un fuego sostenido de armas pesadas y disparos de fusiles automáticos procedentes del aeropuerto internacional de Medibo Keita, en el centro de la ciudad, por cierto. También se han escuchado helicópteros sobrevolando vecindarios cercanos al aeropuerto. La embajada de Estados Unidos en Bamako emitió una alerta citando reportes de explosiones y disparos cerca de Kati y cerca del aeropuerto internacional, como les digo, ¿no? Bueno, entonces, esto es lo que se vive en esta región del mundo, ¿no? Un colapso, aseguran, posiblemente un colapso del gobierno, que ya está muy cantado desde hace tiempo, ¿no? Que están a punto ahí de caer en manos pues, de estos grupos radicales ya completamente, ¿no? Mientras tanto, también se anuncia, en este momento la FDI de Israel está anunciando que se pide a la población de Líbano, otra vez, ¿verdad?, que se vayan del sur, básicamente, ¿no? O sea, que la gente que está aquí del Líbano, pues se vayan del sur, tienen que irse más al norte por ahora. Israel le pide a los libaneses que no vuelvan al sur del país a pesar del alto al fuego. El ejército de Israel pidió a los libaneses desplazados que todavía tienen que regresar hacia otras zonas, ¿no? Que tienen que seguir de refugiados en 60 localidades que, bueno, pues ya se han publicado. El portavoz de las Fuerzas Armadas árabes, Abichai Andrae, que él es el que se encarga de hablar directamente con las comunidades árabes en su propio idioma y les manda mensajes vía Twitter, Telegram, etcétera, ¿no? Redes sociales. Les manda a través de ahí los mensajes y les dice, a ver, háganse para atrás o va a haber un ataque en tal zona, etcétera. En teoría, pues para que haya menos víctimas civiles. Hezbollah, por otro lado, lanzó cohetes en contra de Israel en una pues clara rompimiento del alto al fuego. Ya pues han estado circulando algunas imágenes de estos momentos en los que el sistema del Iron Dome de Israel pues entraba en actividad para tratar de acabar contra estos cohetes, ¿no? Eso también pues es parte importante de lo que está sucediendo en esos momentos. Por cierto, en otros temas, el canciller de Irán, Abbas Araghchi, pues abandonó Islamabad, según lo que ayer lo comentábamos, ¿no? O sea, antes de que siquiera estuviera oficializado que iba a Estados Unidos, Abbas Araghchi se va. Estados Unidos, aparte, ya que iba en camino a la mera, le dicen dense la media vuelta y se regresaron. O sea que no, vamos, se suspende por ahora cualquier diálogo. Y eso lo que implica es, pues, un potencial de conflicto. Aparte, pues estamos en fin de semana, no podemos saber ahorita qué tanto va a subir el petróleo por esta decisión que se acaba de dar de no tener diálogo ya de tiro, ¿sí? Pero posiblemente vamos a ver que el petróleo pues se vaya para arriba, ¿no? Evidentemente, ¿no? Mientras tanto, otro asunto que también pues es un giro importante en todos estos temas, pues ahora sí que internacionales. Estados Unidos autoriza, ojo con esto, autoriza a Venezuela a pagar los abogados de Nicolás Maduro y de Cilia Flores, un tema que pues se estaba esperando una respuesta por parte de Estados Unidos. Bueno, pues ya Maduro podrá tener dinero para su defensa. El defensor de este personaje y de su esposa solicitó en febrero al juez federal del distrito Elvin Hellerstein, con sede en Manhattan, que desestimara el caso porque las sanciones de Estados Unidos impedían al régimen venezolano pagar sus honorarios legales. Bueno, pues ahora ya se le permite. Estados Unidos acordó modificar sus sanciones contra Venezuela para permitir que el régimen del país sudamericano pague el abogado defensor de Nicolás Maduro, reiterando así una restricción que amenazaba con hacer fracasar el proceso contra este personaje. Así con esto el proceso continúa. Maduro tiene 63 años, su esposa Cilia Flores tiene 69. fueron capturados en su domicilio en Caracas allá el 3 de enero, si recordarán, y trasladados a Nueva York, pero al final pues la idea es que se va por el régimen de leyes, ¿verdad? O sea, Estados Unidos, pues entonces ahí iba a estar complicado poder seguir con el juicio si no tenían esta apertura. Entonces, bueno, pues se decide hacer este movimiento según lo que dicen. Bueno, pues parte también de lo que está pasando en el mundo. Vámonos pues a otros asuntos importantes. Esto que estamos viendo se reporta allá en Rusia, ¿no? Según lo que muestran, a ver si se puede ver la imagen, ¿no? Se reporta donde pues hay, vamos a decir, movimientos o pues como una especie de protesta, ¿no? Llama mucho la atención porque, a ver, según lo que se sabe, esto es en Ucrania, perdón, esto es en Ucrania. Es una especie como de demostración en el que la gente, pues todavía, mucha gente al menos, no ha regresado a casa, ¿no? O sea, vamos que la guerra continúa. Esto es en apoyo a los prisioneros de guerra ucranianos y soldados desaparecidos por las Fuerzas Armadas, en las que aseguran pues que todavía hay gente que no ha regresado a casa. Eso es parte también de lo que se está viviendo en Kiev en esta ocasión. También otro reporte muestra pues estas imágenes, si podemos ponerlas por aquí, es esta mera, ahí está. Según lo que reportan, residentes aseguran que este humo ha salido en Karash el sábado. Videos en Irán International muestran un incidente donde desde diferentes ángulos se han visto pues estas como columnas de humo básicamente, ¿no? Esto, bueno, pues llama la atención. Evidentemente no queda muy claro de qué se trata, si son ataques, si es algo interno o qué está sucediendo, ¿no? No hay informe oficial, obviamente, de la causa de estos incendios o explosiones o lo que sea, ¿no? Porque no queda claro. Pero sí que llama la atención porque ya desde hace varios días se habla de que hay grupos que estarían rebelándose al régimen. Si esto es así, pues tarde o temprano seguramente aparecerán con algún comunicado, ¿verdad? Pero mientras tanto, pues bueno, no queda claro. Great, so let's quickly go to the comments. How have you been? Greetings, Jaron. Hello there, Roblox Marta. A big shout out to the whole community. Thank you very much. All the way to Atlanta. Shout out to you, Melanie. Yes, right, it's Melanie. Patri, how have you been? A big shout out to you too. Thank you so much for joining us. Patri, hello there. Data, how are you? How have you been? Marta and the whole community, Jeron, Roblox, the whole community, thank you so much for joining us. We'll keep updating the information in a while. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care. See you later. Goodbye.